I love going on a staycation, but I don't enjoy the fact that you're still doing a lot of the cooking yourself, as eating out every night as a family of four is really expensive these days. So I've set aside 3.5 hours to see how much food I can make to take with me on my holiday to make life feel a little bit easier. Most of the meals will be reheated in my air fryer and will be super easy to take with us in the car. Unlike my other batch cooking videos, this one is going to be a little bit different as I'm making breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, and sweet treat options. I'm going to start by making all the things that need an oven first. So we're going to make some homemade granola. And essentially all you need to do is pick some nuts that you like. So we've got a mix here today of almonds, got some pecan nuts, I've got some macadamia nuts, cashews, got some Brazil nuts as well. And essentially you just take a handful of each of these and pop them in a high-speed food processor until you've ground them up to a fine powder. Now you can leave them roughly chopped, but because this is for the kids, I generally find they tend to eat it when it just looks like clumps of like crunchy oats and they don't realize all of the nutty goodness that's in here. So let's get started on that step. We always have nuts in the house for snacks. And so really you can put whatever you want in here and use as much or as little as you like. So I'm just going to blitz these up and then we'll mix everything together. The nuts have now been ground up into a powder. So now I'm just going to pour in some oats and some mixed spice. And you can kind of flavor it however you want. So sometimes I do cinnamon, sometimes I do just ginger to make it like a gingerbread sort of granola. You could add cacao powder if you wanted it to be chocolatey. It's completely up to you. And then some maple syrup. Then once this is combined, I'll pop it on a baking tray. And I just lay this out on an oven tray. When we eat this granola, we tend to have it like on top of yogurt bowls or things like that. So once that's all spread out, I'm going to pop that in the oven and that will cook whilst we get the tray bake batters ready. So I'm now going to start making a sponge cake. I'm doing a trick that I love to do when I make this sort of recipe, where I make one base cake batter, I split it in two, and then I add different flavors to each half of the mix. This just cuts down work time and means you get a little bit more variety. Next, I'm going to add in the eggs and give it one final stir before I split the batter into two and add my flavors. Now this time I'm doing one that's more child friendly and one that's more for the grown-ups. So the batter's mixed up nicely and it's a doubled up batter so I can split it across two trays. All I've got to do now is add in some vanilla extract and I am ready to split the mix in two. I've portioned off the first part of the batter. I need to invest in another cake tin. I'm just creating a little barrier here and I'm going to use this tin, then I can get both of them in the oven at the same time. This sponge is going to be for the kids to enjoy, so I'm going to pop some chocolate chips in here. Then I'm just going to top with some frozen fruit, some blackberries, and then I'm going to put some raspberries in here too. And really you could put whatever you want in this sponge. That's the great thing about having like one base recipe, then you can adapt the flavors to suit you. Sometimes I'll put frozen blueberries in here, but I'm just trying to use up some of the stuff that we've got before we head away on our holidays. So that's the kids one done. Now for the grown-up one, I'm just going to pop a little bit of coffee in here. Then I've got some dates, which I'm going to mix in. Then I'm just going to add some walnuts. And that's now also ready for the oven. The granola is now out of the oven and nice and crispy. I'm just going to add in some extra flavours, and we'll add a different texture to the granola. You could also add some flaxseed if you wanted to. And you could add some extra chocolate chips to make it a little bit more indulgent. I sometimes pop a pinch of salt in here as well, just to balance out the flavours. All that's left to do now is pop the granola into some airtight containers, and then you're ready to go and take it away. Whilst the tray bakes cook, I have made a sheep pancake batter. This is my usual sheep pancake recipe, but this time I am changing up the flavours a little bit, as I'm using up some of the frozen fruit that's in my freezer. So this time I'm going to be doing a chocolate and cherry version. I love making these sheep pancakes because they reheat really well in an air fryer, and the kids love it, and it's just a lot less hassle than making fresh pancakes in the morning. As these cherries are quite sour, I'm going to add a little bit of extra sweetness by popping some chocolate chips into the batter. These are now going to go in the oven, and I'm going to get my tray bakes out. The tray bakes have come out really, really lovely. So I'm going to just slice them up now into portions so that I can pop them in a container or a freezer bag and easily store them in our cool box to take away on holiday. As you can see, it's come out really light and fluffy, and I'm sure the kids are going to love this version. As for the adult tray bake, again, I'm really happy with how this has turned out. And I love the texture the dates gave to this cake. As you'll see, I've cut them into slightly bigger portions, and that will be perfect for a little snack during our holidays. I'm also going to slice up the sheep pancakes, and again, I will store them in a freezer bag. All I need to do is pop them in the air fryer to reheat them when we are away on our holiday. Next up, we're going to be making some more snacks and lunch items to take away with us, as batch cooking doesn't just have to be for dinners. And the first thing I'm going to make is some homemade sausage rolls. We are nearly an hour in and things are going really well to time. Now, this recipe couldn't be easier. You literally take a sheet of puff pastry, pop some sausage meat on the pastry, fold it over in half, cut to the size that you prefer. Press the edges down with a fork to seal the mix in. And as you'll see, you can make a large quantity of sausage rolls here for a fraction of the price as to if you bought their, really good quality sausage rolls that you see in the supermarket. So I will pop these on an oven tray, and then all you need to do is take 1 to 2 egg yolks, whisk them up in a mug or a dish, and then lightly brush the egg yolk on top of the sausage rolls. Now, if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know there's something I always like to put on my sausage rolls to make them look extra special. That is some nigella seeds. I just think it gives them a really nice touch. The next thing I'm going to do is move on to making one of my lunch items. These are homemade tray bake quiches, again using shop bought pastry. Now, these quiches are pretty indulgent, so very much a holiday item, as you'll see in a moment when I make the filling. But they're so delicious, they freeze really well, and they're just really handy to have for lunches and just cuts down on what you need to buy when you're out and about.
So I've lined the pastry tins, and then I'm actually going to blind bake them, as I just think it stops them going too soggy under the bottom. And you'll notice I did have some spare pastry, which I used for another quiche. So to blind bake, you literally prick the pastry with a fork, pop in some baking paper or greaseproof paper, and then I've tipped some ceramic beans into my trays, which just kind of hold the paper down and allow the pastry to have its first bake. These will bake for about 20 minutes or so, and then I will give them 5 minutes without the beans or the puff pastry on top so that it browns off. Next up, I'm going to make my fillings. So I've gone for a meat quiche and a veggie quiche. And so I browned off some bacon before starting to make my custard. Now, I said before, this is a pretty indulgent quiche. So we're starting with eggs. And next up, I'm going to add in some double cream to my whisked eggs, along with some Gruyere cheese. And finally, a little bit of cracked black pepper and some Dijon mustard. Not the quiche to be eating if you're watching your weight, but it really is delicious and a really lovely treat to have when you're away on holiday. What I love about this recipe is, like the tray bake, you make one base custard filling, and then you can adapt the flavors across each of the quiches to suit what you prefer. So now the custard is done, I will line my veggie quiche with some caramelized onion chutney. And actually, funny story, I had this quiche when our second child was born. This was what they served me in hospital. It was like a ploughman's quiche, and it was so tasty. I just thought it was such a good idea putting the chutney in the bottom. And my other quiche is more of a quiche Lorraine style. So I've popped some bacon in there, and then I'm going to top both of them with my custard. Now, in hindsight, I was pretty generous with the bacon in that quiche, so I probably would use slightly less next time if I was to make it, but it certainly was super tasty. And then to finish off both quiches, I'm just popping some chopped spring onions on the top to add a little bit of extra colour and taste and texture. These will go in the oven to bake for 30 to 35 minutes, a little bit more if needed, until they're nice and golden and set. And if you look, I'm really pleased with how they've come out on the cross section. The sausage rolls are also out the oven, and I am delighted with how these have turned out. These are so delicious and the perfect thing to take away with us for picnics on our holiday. So we're an hour and a half in, and I am going to start making the dinners. Now, the night before this batch cook, I popped a bolognese in the slow cooker to cook on low overnight, and then in the morning it was ready to be bagged up into 2 freezer bags for 2 different meals. The first meal we'll have on holiday is just a simple bolognese pasta bake cooked in the air fryer with lots of crispy cheese on the top. This is a real crowd pleaser for the kids. The next recipe is a little bit more indulgent, but quite a fun meal to have when you're on holidays. It's kind of like a fake away. Literally, I just air fry some chips, pop a portion of the bolognese on the top, along with some cheese. This will be turned into cheeseburger fries. Quite like this because you don't need to take lots of extra ingredients on holiday with you for the assembly of this meal. So once the cheese is golden and crispy, literally all you need to do is pop your toppings on. So I went for some spring onions, some jalapenos to give it a bit of a kick, and then I finished off with some burger sauce. Now normally I would make my own, but when you're going away, you just want as easy as possible. Next up, I'm going to move on to preparing a veggie chili. As like the bolognese, this is a really handy meal to take away because it will store flat in a freezer bag. And I'm taking my usual favourite shortcuts using frozen garlic cubes, frozen onion, and frozen mixed peppers. You can adapt the spice level of this chili to suit your taste, but I've kept ours quite mild because it gives us a higher chance of the kids eating it. So next up, I'm going to add in the beans. This time I've gone for black beans, and I picked up some kidney beans that were already in a chili sauce, as we quite like the flavour that gives. And then all I need to do is add in some chopped tomatoes using my favourite tin opener. I'm left-handed, and this saves me every time. I've popped a link below if you're interested in finding out more. And this will now simmer down. When we're ready to eat the chili, I will serve it firstly as cheesy nachos. And again, like the cheeseburger fries, what I really like about this is you can bring some garnishes and toppings really to suit your tastes. So I went for some jalapenos, some avocado, a squeeze of lime. I also had some coriander left in the fridge. And it just is such a tasty meal and so easy to make when you're away. We also will enjoy the chili as a chili itself. And again, you can adapt the garnishes to suit your tastes. Recently, I've got quite into having chili with a bit of feta crumbled over the top. And then I used up some coriander, a little bit more of the lime, and some avocado. And I love the fact this doubles up on ingredients here, as that makes the shopping much more straightforward for when you're going away. Finally, I am going to make up a batch of crispy cornflake coated chicken, as this is one of the kids' favourites. This is a really easy meal to transport, as you can pack it flat in the freezer bag and have it in your cool box. And we probably would enjoy this on the first night as another kind of fake away treat. So build your own chicken burgers. And again, this doubles up on the burger sauce that I've used for the cheeseburger fries. So we're coming to the end of my batch cook. I've got about 15 minutes left, and I'm going to make a sweet treat, as everybody loves a sweet treat to take on holiday. Now, in this video, I was actually experimenting with making my own cookie dough recipe that lives in the freezer as cookie dough balls. But I have to be completely honest with you, although they were really delicious, I still think this recipe needs a bit of work. So if you do want to have a go at making your own frozen cookie dough balls that you can then reheat in the air fryer, I've popped my all-time favorite recipe in my recipe links below, which is from Jane's Patisserie. They're her NYC cookies, and honestly, they are our favorite. When both of our girls were born, these were one of the things that I batch cooked and I kept in the freezer so that we could simply cook them from frozen and enjoy them as a little treat when we were dealing with our newborn babies. And all you have to do is pop them in an oven or an air fryer until they are nice and golden. And you can either enjoy them warm straight away, we can allow them to cool slightly, and they're just really delicious.
Hopefully this video has given you some inspiration if you are going on a staycation and want to make life feel a little bit easier. Our last staycation cost us £60 for 4 nights at Butlins. The kids absolutely loved it, but I did so much cooking. And so that's what inspired me to try something a little different this time. If you're interested in other videos like this, please check out the latest batch cook video on my channel, where I made a month of meals to get me through the summer holidays for under £150.